Hey, it's me again. We're going to be looking at Act 1, Scene 1 of Midsummer Night's Dream. And I'm going to just kind of walk you through. I'm not going to read the play to you, so this video works best if you've already read the scene or if as you're going. So I'm just going to point out a couple things to you. And I'm also going to try to point out a few of the places where there are some ambiguities and some different ways to read some of the characters. So we're going to start at the beginning. The first two characters that the play opens with are in Act 1, Scene 1. So first of all, you need to know that we're in Athens, and we are going to be looking at the Duke and future Duchess of Athens. So we're looking at Theseus and Hippolyta. And what's interesting here in this part, so you see right here, now fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour, draws on apace. So what's happening here is that their wedding is coming up. Remember from the background information that we have a little allusion here. So Theseus is an allusion to ancient Greek mythology, as is Hippolyta. She was the queen of the Amazons, and Theseus is the king, duke of Athens, who actually won over Hippolyta. And that comes in when we get to this part down here, where he says, Hippolyta, I wooed thee with my sword, and won thee doing the injuries. Sorry, won thy love doing the injuries, but I will wed thee in another key. So our first ambiguity is actually right here with exit philostrate. And when we're looking at that, the two ways that we can kind of see that, it depends on how long you pause. So, or how long Theseus pauses there. If Theseus says, the pale companion is not for our pomp. Hippolyta, I wooed thee with my sword and won thy love doing the injuries. Excuse the bell. That short pause makes it sound like the pale companion here is Hippolyta, right? Or this pale companion could be the moon, right? Or it could be the fact that we don't want any melancholy people at our wedding. So this longer pause, the pale companion is not for our pomp. Exit philostrate. Hippolyta, I wooed thee with my sword and won thy love doing the injuries. It sounds more apologetic that way. So that's one way of looking at it. Again, that's one of those points that I love about Shakespeare, because we can decide how we want to read it. There's a couple other moments that we want to make sure that we pay attention to here. We know that Aegeus, when he comes in, is going to be asking for permission to beg the ancient privilege of Athens to so to follow Athenian law. As she is mine, I may dispose of her, which will either be to Demetrius or to her death. So an important plot point there. Hermia gets into that sort of gender role thing when my father would look with my eyes. This idea too of the eyes, you're going to see that comes in over and over again throughout this part, right? Your father should be as a god, the eyes here, and then you see it with it's starting to introduce the idea of the perception versus reality. So what's real in what we see versus what's actually going on. So we want to make sure that we kind of keep that in mind. Another moment that we want to look at here has to do, we finally get a little humor into the play right here with Lysander's kind of comeback at Demetrius, when Demetrius says, relent, sweet Hermia, right, like marry me, and Lysander says, actually, you have her father's love, marry him. It's sort of a childish moment there. It goes back to sort of, if you remember being in elementary school and someone's like, oh, I love these french fries, and you're like, oh, if you love them so much, you should marry him. So it's kind of a childish moment of joke, but it is, again, a joke that we want to make sure that we pay attention to. The love triangle gets more complicated right here with Lysander when he points out that Demetrius has actually made love to Nutter's daughter, Helena, and so that whole idea comes up. So we find out that Demetrius may not be as perfect as we think he is, which apparently rumor already had, because I have heard so much. Theseus had already heard about it. Never good for the king to have heard that you had some relations. The next part we want to make sure we look at here is these lines, starting with Lysander and then going through here. What's interesting, remember that the dash in literature, in writing, a dash is an interruption. So when we use a dash in writing, we're interrupting a thought or we're interrupting a sentence. And so with these dashes that we see show up here, after blood, years, and friends. Excuse me. One of the things that we're looking at here is that Hermia's lines then are interrupting. So in all of these, you see Hermia is actually interrupting Lysander. So her thoughts are continuing his, but they're also interrupting his. So let's look at these lines together. But either it was different in blood, O cross too high to be enthralled too low, or else misgraft in respective years, O spite too old to be engaged too young. So with each of these things, he's trying to explain this first concept of this sentence. See, the beginning of the sentence is actually up here. The course of true love never did run smooth. The beginning of this sentence, the course of true love never did run smooth, by the way, is our first aphorism in the play. Remember, an aphorism from our notes is a general statement of truth, right? So this is a truth that applies not just to Hermia and Lysander, but to all lovers, right? True love never did run smooth. We know that from our own lives. We know that from Romeo and Juliet. We know that from every love story, romantic comedy, tragedy, anything having to do with love. So the rest of the sentence then goes through all of the different ways in which true love never did run smooth. It was different in blood, so that would be like the households, right? Too high to be enthralled to low would be essentially that there are different stations, right? Or else misgraft in respective years. So someone who's too old and in love with someone too young, or too young in love with someone too old. And that's what Hermia explains here, right? Or else it's stopped upon the choice of friends, right? To choose love by another's eyes. And that's really kind of what's going on here, is that Aegeus wants to choose Hermia's mate where she's already found someone that she falls in love with. Or if there were a sympathy and choice, war, death, or sickness did lay siege to it. So essentially what they're doing is they're going through all of the different ways that true love never did run smooth. The other thing here that we can see in these lovers, and this kind of goes back to the Romeo and Juliet first kiss scene, where in Romeo and Juliet they completed each other's rhyme. Here they're completing each other's sentences, or completing each other's thoughts. They're so in sync with each other. That's how well they know each other. All right? Now, it's going to be okay, because as you all identified in Romeo and Juliet, there is an option that that play never explores, which is that Romeo and Juliet could run away together. But they never explore that option. Interestingly enough, Lysander and Hermia do. In fact, he suggests that they run away from the Athenian law 7 leagues away and get married in the woods. And so they set a place to meet, a meeting place, and a time to go there. Hermia, you want to make sure that you pay attention to all of her allusions. You see me pointing them out here. So Cupid's strongest bow, Venus's doves, even here the Carthage queen and the false Trojan under sail was seen. So these are all allusions, obviously, to ancient Greek mythology. But these first two you want to make sure that you pay attention to, because these are obviously Cupid, Venus, the goddess of love. This is Cupid is her son, and he makes you fall in love. But then the Carthage queen, when the false Trojan was seen, this is someone who was so in love that she would rather destroy herself than be stuck with her lover. And then Helena comes in. Helena's an interesting character. So we can pick up from the conversation. You'll see it come up here. Hermia and Helena are actually best of friends and have been for a long time. So we see this here with their emptying our bosoms in their sweet counsel to seek new friends in stranger companies. And then this place here is farewell, sweet playfellow. That part there also tells us these are two women or two girls who've been friends forever. So since they were tiny little people and having play dates, they've been friends. Now, one thing that we need to consider here is whether or not this is an intelligent choice on the part of Hermia and Lysander to tell Helena what their plan is. We see from the first time Helena comes in that she clearly is having issues with Demetrius and Hermia and his caring for her. Call you me fair, oh happy fair, your eyes are lodestars, your tongue's sweet air, more tunable than lark to shepherd's ear. Sorry, I hope that's not showing up here. Oh, were favor so, yours would I catch, fair Hermia, ere I go. You can almost read her as being sort of obsessive. It's that unrequited love has sort of made her, she wants to be Hermia. That's one way to read her. Another way is that she's simply just sad. It's that unrequited love thing, and she just wants to be able to be what Demetrius wants her to be. Not a healthy thing, young ladies and young gentlemen. Not a healthy thing, either way. They make the choice and decision. They make the choice to go ahead and tell Helena their plan. So take comfort, he'll no more see my face. The question for me always here is, should you tell her? I don't know. I mean, maybe I think Hermia is hoping to give her some hope and to kind of say, like, look, I'm going to be out of the picture, and so then he can be all yours again. And they leave Helena alone on stage. So we get Helena's soliloquy here. Now, there are essentially two ways. This gets back into ambiguity again. There are two ways that we can read Helena's soliloquy. So one way is that she's sweet, innocent, unknowing, and naive, and that's one way that we can read it. So when we get to the bottom here, I will go to tell him of fair Hermia's flight, and then to the wood he will tomorrow night pursue her, and for this intelligence, if I have thanks, it's dear expense. And for this intelligence, if I have thanks, it is a dear expense. So the sweet, if we have that reading of it, then that's kind of the same idea where Romeo said that if things end poorly, it doesn't matter because I have 1 minute in her sight right before they get married. Remember that part from Romeo and Juliet? So this part here, if I have thanks, it's dear expense. And so the idea that, like, even though he'll run after Hermia, that 1 minute where he was thankful to me and appreciative of me, it would be worth it. That's kind of that sweet, innocent one. The other way to read it is that she's sort of bitter and jealous and angry. It's not a very good look for anyone, but not a great reading of women here. But anyway, if we see her as sort of neurotic and bitter and jealous, manipulative, then we can look at lines like this. Things base, vile, folding, no quantity. Love can transpose to form and dignity. Love looks not with eyes, but with the mind. And therefore is winged Cupid painted blind. And so that idea that he doesn't know what he wants, and what does he see in her? Like he needs to look at me, and that kind of idea there sort of makes it kind of become more sort of manipulative and bitter. And then also this one, happy some or other some can be. Like, how come Lysander and Hermia get to be happy, but I can't be happy with Demetrius? And it's not a good look. But that's the second way of reading her here. This whole idea, too, if we come back to this line here for a second, winged Cupid painted blind. Remember earlier on I told you that whole where Hermia said she wished that Aegeus would look with her eyes, and it's that intro to the perception versus reality. This is that again. Winged Cupid is painted blind. So it's the idea that maybe his perception of Hermia is not the reality of, and that's kind of true, right? His perception is that he has her father's favor, and so therefore the daughter will love him, Demetrius that is, and we find that not to be true. And Helena also here, I think, is that. So again, you can read her as someone who simply just, if there's one thank you from him, that's enough. Or you can see her as being sort of more jealous of everything that's going on. And that's Act 1, Scene 1 for A Midsummer Night's Dream. I'll see you for Act 2.